Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with Connie Ellefson, who is the author of Clear the Space, Feel the Rush, How to Declutter the Mind and Stuff to Reclaim Energy, Freedom, and Fun. Connie, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the conversation. Before we get started, though, introduce yourself to the audience in your own words. Who is Connie today?
Today, that's a good point. Because last
Good,
week I was
good
different.
kicker. Absolutely. We're always evolving. So who is Connie today?
Well, I'm still an engineer, civil engineer and writer. I've written 4 books. This has been my passion for the past 14 years, and it took a while because I got super busy with my engineering, and I couldn't face one more minute on the computer, so it was delayed for a while. But then it all came together at the last minute, and I had this huge aha moment, which I love. I love aha moments. And I realized my book is about decluttering your body, your physical body, your mind clutter, mental and emotional, and your stuff. And you know that wonderful feeling, I'm sure you had it with the experience you had with getting, selling everything. It's such a wonderful feeling to get rid of all that junk and, things you just don't need anymore. It brings up endorphins in your body. That's what I call the rush. So my book is Clear the Space, Feel the Rush. And I realized when you go for a walk or you basically walking, any kind of exercise, it declutters your body. And I can talk about that a little bit more later, but you get that same rush, you get those endorphins flowing through your body. That makes you feel good. And then if you have an emotional release, which I believe that's the biggest clutter of all, is the mind clutter. Like you're all upset about something and maybe you cry even just a little bit and you feel better. It's the same rush. It's the same endorphins flowing through your body. And that is good for your immune system. So basically decluttering of any kind, and in fact, just being happy is good for your immune system. Endorphins are like how you feel when you eat something spicy and your brain thinks, oh, she's getting burned. Better put out some pain-killing chemicals. And you say, a few minutes later, you just feel so good. You say, that's some darn good chili or whatever. So it's the same stuff. Makes you feel good.
Yeah, I love that. And when we first connected, I really wanted to have you on the show because I could, completely resonate with declutter. And, when we downsized, like you said, it was very liberating. A lot of people asked us, what was it like? How tough was it to sell all your stuff? And honestly, it wasn't difficult at all. It was very liberating. There were times where, we were in our house for 20 years. So we had so much stuff that a lot of it we didn't even realize we had anymore. I remember one time my wife walking up from the basement and just looking over at me and said, how did we get so much crap? And you just don't realize how often you're just accumulating stuff that you're never ever going to use. We live in such a materialistic and consumer based world that we are out there just buying so much stuff that we don't need. And now to really be a minimalist, and we kind of have a rule in the RV now because we have a limited amount of space of a one in, one out rule. So if we buy a new shirt, an old shirt's got to go out. If we buy a new pair of sneakers, an old pair of sneakers has to go out. And it's great to be able to walk around. We'll go to a tourist area, and it's great to be able to walk around a gift shop and be like, oh, that's really cool, but we don't have room for it. So It's really cool. I can enjoy it in this moment and say, that's a beautiful little knickknack. And it looks great right there on its shelf. So yeah, I was really looking forward to having you on the show. And I think the other thing that really resonated with me is, like you said in your intro, you take it even a step further, apart from just decluttering stuff, but also decluttering, your mind and your body. So talk a little bit more. We're going to talk about all. We're going to talk about the stuff. We're going to talk about the body, the mind, but talk a little bit more about that, body and mind declutter and how important that is for us to stay healthy.
Right. So my story was I moved many times when I was a kid, every 6 months to a year. My dad worked for an oil company. And the first 6 years we lived in a trailer. And at one point, the first 3 or 4 years, it was 8 feet wide and 43 feet long, 344 square feet for the 4 of us. me and my little sister and my parents, and it never seemed that crowded. So I just have to assume we didn't have much stuff. But then we finally sold that and started living in houses and then getting more things. But I still had that horror of moving, and I don't want to have too much stuff because then I got to move all these boxes. And so I continued to travel light until I left college to go seek my fortune. Everything I owned was in my car when I went off to Denver to start working. And then 5 years later, I was married. I had 2 little boys, and we moved. And it took me and 5 big guys 4.5 hours to put everything in this giant moving van. So one of the downsides of many of the organizing books, which I love all of them, I've got a huge collection, but they just talk about the stuff. And I'd go through their method. I'd get all excited. I'm going to look so much better now in my house. It's going to be great. And then I'd always stop before I get to the end. I would never completely finish it. So eventually I thought there must be something going on in my mind that's stopping me from this, that's making it too terrifying. But I realized as I went on so there was an emotional block that was a lot bigger than my stuff that was stopping me. And when you haven't been getting enough exercise, or you've been drinking or eating a bunch of food that's not so good for your body, then you feel kind of sluggish. You just want to sit around and not do anything. It kind of feeds on itself, just like clutter feeds on itself. You go into a closet, it's all messy, and you're like, do you really want to put away this sweatshirt you just took off, or you just want to throw it on the pile because there's no motivation when it's not already kind of clean? So that's when I realized that they all tie together. And I also realized that you can start anywhere. You don't have to start with the stuff. In fact, it's probably more productive to start with looking at whatever emotional things are holding you back. So it just kind of makes it more well-rounded. And I like to say people can start anywhere in this journey. They can start with just working out more, or trying to improve their diet somewhat, and then they'll feel more energized. They'll feel more willing and able to go ahead and start on some decluttering, or even sitting down and looking at what's going on inside of you. So I just wanted to make it more well-rounded, and not just this is where you have to start and this is the way you do it. And if you do it my way, it's going to be perfect the rest of your life. So what you said about traveling and seeing these cute knickknacks and things that you might have liked to accumulate in the past, that's never going to stop in your life. So there isn't going to be one program of organizing your stuff that's going to be the rest of your life. Just like you're still going to always have emotional stresses coming at you that you have to deal with. Maybe you get better at it, and hopefully we do. There's always going to be presents that people will give you, or just shopping you'll need to do. So there's always going to be things coming into your life. And so that's my number one tip in all of these 3 areas, is first declutter the guilts. Like, don't feel guilty that it got this way. Like, how could I gotten to this point? Just say, I was busy and I'm doing fine. So take a new page. Every day is a new page, and maybe we're going to do it differently this day. It's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. And I love that, because I do think, when people talk about, being a minimalist and stuff like that, they do focus primarily on the stuff. And I think your mind is the same way. It's just like your house. I mean, if you keep just putting stuff into it, but you don't have a way to release that down the road, again, it just gets cluttered. So, you talked a little bit about the aha moment that you had in your intro. What was that specifically, that was like, wow, I've got to do this. I got to take this next step. We got to declutter. Something's got to change. What was your aha moment?
Well, it was more at the end of writing my book, when I realized that all these things tie together, the body, mind, and stuff, and how they tie together. And I had read a cool book called Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And he's a neuroscientist and a chiropractor. Also someone who puts their money where their mouth is, because he talked himself out of a serious bike injury 30 or 40 years ago that they said, you may never walk again. He said, no, not good enough. So he just went to work on his mind, and 12 weeks later, he walked out of the hospital. So he's been studying that kind of thing ever since then. That was quite a while ago. And he had one of the things he described that was part of my big aha was a conference he had in 2016 where he had about 120 people that agreed to an experiment over the course of a 4-day conference. So at the beginning, he tested their saliva with just a cheek swab for immunoglobulin A. That's a chemical protein that's in your body, and it says, this is how strong your immune system is today, right now. And then he asked them each to spend 10 minutes 3 times a day over the course of the 4 days, putting themselves in a high vibrational emotional state, such as happiness, gratitude, love, whatever. Basically 30 minutes a day of being happy. And I'm sure they enjoyed the conference quite a bit too. So there's probably some more happiness going on. But at the end of the 4 days, he checked them again, and their immunoglobulin A had gone up an average of 50%.
Wow.
And he said, this is much more powerful than any flu shot or vitamin C or anything else you might take to improve your immune system. And it's all within your body. And as my bigger aha moment after all this came together for me was, you can turn it on anytime you want. You don't have to. I'm giving away my big secret. At the very end of this time, I thought back to a yoga class I'd taken during the summer a couple of years or so earlier, and we were all outside. We were trying to stay away from each other, so we were all outside under the trees, looking up at the shavasana. At the end of every yoga class, you just lie on your back and relax everything. So it's pretty pleasant. And then the instructor voice was very soothing, and she was playing this wonderful music, and I'm just going, oh, I feel so good. Oh. And then all of a sudden I went, wait a minute. It's not the music. It's not the maple leaves up there with the dappling sunlight. It's not shavasana. It's all coming from inside me. I'm the one that turned all that on. So I realized you can turn it on yourself anytime you want.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's
something that I think a lot of people struggle with, that they don't, for whatever reason, they don't buy into the fact that, happiness is a decision.
mm-hmm.
And, it's something that, like you said, we can turn it on ourselves.
Right.
So, for those who are out there that might be doubters, who are like, nah, I can't, I'm not in control of my own happiness. This happens to me and this happens to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's out of my control. What is your response to them?
It's just a matter of, well, I don't know, educating yourself, or looking at some heroes who've come such a long way, like Dr. Viktor Frankl, who was in a concentration camp and managed to figure out a way to inspire himself to stay alive. And I believe I read that what he did was he dreamed about, or he envisioned himself giving lectures after the war, after he got out of the camp. And that's what he ended up doing. And that dream was what pulled him forward and kept him alive. So there's one of the cool things that I also realized recently about, because I always, my big thing is declutter the guilt. Why do we have so much guilt? Why do we feel it? It's really more shame. It's not so much guilt. I've been told by 3 different psychologists. But anyway, before you're 8 years old, you don't have any filter for what comes at you from outside influences. Your parents, your family, the rest of your friends, society. You just bring it all in and you kind of go, okay, I guess so. And also during that same time, they're trying to help you be an adult, or be a person. So they're giving you all these instructions about what to do and not to do. So by the time you're 7 or 8 years old, you probably heard, no, don't do that. That's wrong. You haven't done it right 100,000 times or more. So that's a lot of conditioning. And if you can be kind to yourself and just keep saying, no, I actually am a pretty nice person. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna have to disagree with you there when you think I'm crazy or whatever. But most of it comes within your head. It's you repeating all these things that have been told to you over the years when you're young. So there's lots of little tricks you can do, from very simple things like journaling to to try to reprogram your own thinking, because you're probably your number one influence. So that's, you know, I go all the way from super simple things to even just thinking about it to I introduce some energy healing techniques that some are easy that you can do yourself. Some you might want to get a professional to help you with, but they're all ways of reprogramming your own thinking so that you're kinder to yourself, which makes
Yeah.
it a lot easier for you to shine in the world and do more, more interesting things.
Yeah. Yeah. And we are, I think it's for whatever reason, it's human nature to be our own worst critic, so to really adapt and to love ourselves more and to take that time, I think is so important. And, I know, probably within the last 10 years or so, I've started walking and hiking quite a bit.
Great.
And, it's funny, there's times where I may not actually be in the mood to go on a walk or hike, but I've
Mhm.
got a golden retriever who, absolutely loves it and, does his best to make sure I don't miss a day. And
Right.
it's so funny on the days when I want to do it the least, it seems
Uh,
like that's when he's bugging me the most. I'll be sitting trying to do something and he's nudging my elbow or whatever the case is. And finally I give in, I hook him up on the leash and we go out on a walk. And, even though I didn't want to do it, by the time we're done walking, like I feel just so much better, so much, more re-energized,
mhm.
so again, I can speak firsthand how much that, how much good that does you to just, again, get the air flowing through your lungs, and just completely changes your attitude. And that's whether it's we try to walk at least 3 miles a day. It doesn't always work out that way.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes
That's great.
sometimes we'll go 5, sometimes we'll go 2, whatever the case is. We've done some 16-mile hikes and stuff like that with him. Um, but no matter what, I always feel better at the end than when I started. Even on those long 16-mile hikes,
Mhm.
when my body is tired, my mind feels very rejuvenated. So it is, it is true. It works. And it's just a
Uh-huh.
matter of getting over that first hump of, getting off the couch, getting out of the chair, getting away from the computer and taking some time out. And I think, for years and years, society has programmed us to, just work, 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 work,
Mhm.
constantly be grinding and that sort of stuff. And it's so counterproductive in the end. Like you have to
Right.
take some time for yourself.
Mhm.
Um, and again, you're still, you said you're still an engineer, but you also, you're also an author, published author here, so what is that, um, you know, kind of balance like for you between, work life and making sure that you don't get your mind cluttered?
Mhm. Someone said the other day, I was over at my athletic club and they said, "Oh, you came over to clear your head, right?" I'm like, "Whoa, you can do two things at once." Declutter your mind while you declutter your body. But it's I've been on my own. I've been a consultant since 2008, and I haven't had a regular job except for about 3 months um, a few years ago. And I realized my work is very challenging, and I've never enjoyed it that much, but it pays the bills quite well. So I continue to do it. But I realized that when I could have my own schedule, like it's super, super hard for me to sit still at a computer for 3 or 4 hours and just keep working away. And actually, it was another organizer who opened that up for me. She said, you have to organize around the kind of person you are and how you work productively or whatever, things. And she said, are you the kind of person that can sit and work steadily for 3 or 4 hours, or do you get antsy after an hour and want to get up and do something different? And I'm like, oh, I didn't know it was okay to be that way. I always thought that was substandard. So now that I can work 6 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 10 p.m. or whatever, and I gradually over the last few years, I used to feel guilty when I go off because for their years, I had so much work. I had to work 7 days a week, not all day long, but I had to work every day. So I'd feel guilty when I went off to the athletic club to take a class or something. And now I'm like, that goes on the schedule first now. And if I'm going to spend some time with my grandchildren or whatever, that's on the schedule first. And I have no problem now with saying, nope, I can't meet with a client at that time because I'm already busy. And so that's been something that I'm proud of. Decluttered my own guilt about not staying on the job all the time.
Yeah.
So I also had this change from during the pandemic. We had 3 months where we were locked down and we couldn't go to the athletic club. And I used to go 2 or 3 times a week before that, but then after we locked down, I chose to go ahead and pay my expensive dues for this place. And then after it started up, I'm like, I'm going to start going 5 times a week. I'm going to get my money back. And guess what? Now I'm a lot stronger and more agile.
Yeah.
And I work out harder when I'm in a class, and I enjoy it more because there's other people around and there's music and stuff like that. So it works out well for me, but I did have to gradually work on it. And I do some of my energy healing things too, especially tapping. I don't know if you've heard of emotional freedom technique or tapping, but that's one of the easiest, simplest, most effective things you can do for yourself to change your mind body state in about 10 minutes. And it's very mind body, very physical. It's nothing, there's nothing woo woo about it. It's just like you're working on your nervous system the same way you would if you went to an acupuncturist. So anyway.
More about that. I've never heard of tapping. Tell me a
Really?
little bit more about that if you would.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. It's been around about 40 years. I think it was discovered by a chiropractor and a couple of people developed it, but they found that when you like I'm sure you're familiar with acupuncture, it's lines of energy that flow through your body, and they put the needles in on different places along those meridians to open up flows of energy. So then you feel better or the pain goes away or whatever. So the end points of those meridians are located mainly around your face. And they're the way that it's developed to this point is you think about something or you talk about something to yourself that's bothering you right now. It could be like my neck hurts or whatever, or you're upset about something, like somebody looked at you cross-eyed and you're like, well, I wonder if they're mad at me or whatever. So you say some statement related to this thing and you tap on the side of your hand, which is, I believe, the end point of the, I can't remember which one. It's like spleen, kidney, all those different organ systems. Those are the meridians. So you tap on the side of your hand and you say, my neck hurts really bad. And even though first you say, how bad on a scale of 1 to 10 do I feel right now, or is this pain? So it might be a 6 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 or whatever. It might be a 12 out of 10. It hurts so much, I just can't stand it. Even though I have this pain, that's how I feel, and that's okay. So you're acknowledging your feeling and you're not fighting it. That's resistance. That's what makes it always worse. So you say that 3 times, whatever, and you don't have to say the same thing like, I hate this pain in my neck. It's not me. And one of the big statements that they often say is, even though I feel this way, I love and accept myself anyway, which is hard for some people to say. So you do that 3 times, and then you start tapping on the inside of your eyebrow. I hate this pain. My neck hurts so bad. I wish it didn't hurt this way. And you talk about, so you're moving the underneath your eye, underneath your nose. There's, I believe, 2 meridians that end right at that point. And then under your chin, just a little bit below your collarbone, that's actually the endpoints of the kidney meridian. And then you also go the last or second to last, it's underneath your armpit, 2 or 3 inches down. And that's the endpoint of the spleen meridian. And then you tap also on the top of your head. So 2 of them meet up there too at the top of your head. So anyway, and the weird part about it is you just keep saying negative things about it. Like I started doing this with my son one day, and I'm like, oh, I'm such a terrible person because this is happening. And he said, don't you dare say that about yourself, Mom, because you're not that, you should never say a negative thing about yourself. Well, you're thinking of those things. So what this process does is it scrambles that thinking. It scrambles that message that you keep giving yourself. So you keep tapping away through the points and saying awful things about yourself, whatever it is you're thinking, or it shouldn't be this way, or I hate this, or, this isn't me. And then after maybe 3 or 4 minutes of doing that, then you start saying more positive things like, yeah, I know this is hard, but I've been through this before. And I have managed to get well. I managed to get better. Doesn't mean it's, this is my life sentence. And then you say more and more positive things about yourself and the situation. So at the end of about 10 minutes, you definitely feel better, because it does bring the same thing. It brings up the endorphins. And sometimes you can completely obliterate some long-standing opinion you've had about yourself in just that short of a time. But
Fascinating.
you might check in with your neck, after you're done and say, oh, it's only a 3 out of 10 now instead of a 6. So even if it just goes a little bit down, that's better. It's an improvement. And you keep going as many rounds as you want. So there's a 2 brothers and sister family called the Ortners who do a tapping summit every spring at first week of March. And they have all these lectures and different topics that you can tap about. And so you can tap along. You get free access for a week, and then you can purchase the program, which is very inexpensive, to use it again and again anytime. And yeah, it's a life changer. And I wrote about one situation. I've been doing this for years and I totally believe in it, but there was one day I was so upset about some interpersonal thing. And I went out and I started walking and I was feeling, I feel so bad. I was actually crying. Nobody was around. And they say the more emotion you throw into it, the better it works. So I'm like, I'm never going to feel better. It's not going to work this time. I know it isn't, because I just feel so bad. And I walked around about 3 blocks worth in my area. And by the time I got 3 houses away from my own house, I was already feeling better. And in fact, I think I'd stopped thinking about the thing and I was already thinking about something else. And I went, oh yeah, it worked even when I didn't think it would work. And even when I didn't want it to work, because I was just so determined to feel bad about it. So it's staggering. And there's lots of studies that show the efficacy of it too, which is on their website. Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. I'm definitely going to dig into that more. Connie, is there anything that we missed that you'd like to bring up to the audience that you think would be valuable to them?
Is this your big question, or is this no?
Getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there. Okay,
we're getting there. It's just a matter of being kind to yourself and looking at. Oh, there is one big point that I like to make. Women understand this. Men maybe not as much always, but if you hear that somebody that you respect and maybe would like to keep the good opinion of is coming over in 15 minutes, warp speed all around your house, tidying up as fast as you can to make it look the best you can. So I always say fear is a very good motivator. So if you keep inviting people over for dinner, then you're going to make sure that you keep your space clean. And you can look at it as a fun thing too. Like, it doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, they're coming over. It could be just like, ooh, this should be interesting. Like the Cat in the Hat. I always love that story.
Yeah.
How the cat cleaned everything up, and by the time it took Mom to walk up the block, he had everything cleaned up. So I love that story. But my book talks about, and a lot of organizers say, think about your dream for how you want to spend your time. Like, do you want to do like you do, Dan, and travel all the time? Or do you have a favorite hobby that you'd like to spend some time on? And think about that in the way you set up your household. And you want to clear the decks for those favorite activities, then you're just going to be enriching your life that much more. So you can do it the fear way, which works really well. Or you can also do it the dreams. The dreams will pull you forward. So you can do it either way.
Very cool. Very cool. Connie, how do people find you on the internet? How do they get a copy of the book? If they want to reach out to you and find out more about some of the stuff you're talking about, how can they find you on the internet?
Okay. My website is pretty easy to remember. It's called clearthespace.com. Oh, here's a picture of my book, which I think is very colorful, even though the words are probably backwards. But I wanted to talk about the energy that you get from decluttering, not just serenity and lotus blossoms. So my book is kind of unusual that way. But at clearthespace.com, you can order the book. You can even order a free review copy if you're willing to give us a review. And then you can sign up for some free tips and tricks that are additional declutter tips, which there's a bunch of them in my book. But and then I'm doing a lot of TikTok videos. That's kind of what I'm working towards, because my dream is to do more video. That's what I love more than anything. So I'm doing that. I've got a couple on YouTube, and some of my blog posts are on there that where I've been a guest, as I have with you. So that's most of it. There's stuff on Facebook and LinkedIn, but mainly I'm working towards the video option.
Very cool. Very cool. Connie, that brings us to our final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things, then the whole world changes. So it's one of the little things that Connie does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place.
Well, as you know, when you're in a good mood, you're going to treat other people better. And one of the most powerful practices that I discovered along this writing process was to sit down for 10 minutes a day and do absolutely nothing. You're not praying, you're not meditating, you're not thinking, you're not planning. You're just sitting there getting bored with yourself. And your intuition, God, or whoever can then give you messages, your higher self. And some of them are just so profound, it's staggering. But when you come into the present, and there's nothing wrong with not being in the present, because that's just the way we are sometimes, but you're right here. And I always try to, whatever I've been worrying about, I just kind of okay, let's go up and look down from the 50 foot level or whatever, and put that stuff aside for a few minutes. But sometimes I'll be reminded of something that I'd almost forgotten I needed to do that was actually kind of important or would help somebody quite a bit. Or I'll have an idea for a video or a blog post. But it's always fascinating what comes through in those 10-minute times. So I feel that, and I usually feel more like, I feel more like I'm a person that can give out love and kindness to people when I've stopped and just taken a breath, so to speak. So for me, that's a way of improving the world, is just improving myself. And then usually I'll just go ahead and take whatever action came to me at that moment. And that's it's always beneficial.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, you can't be a benefit to the world if you're not in a good spot yourself. So I love that answer for sure. For folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. While you're there, pick up a copy of my most recent book, Journey My Mother's Son, Volume 1. Connie, again, really appreciate you taking the time. I love this conversation. Hopefully people start looking at themselves and start getting rid of stuff in their house, in their mind, and in their body. So great message today for sure.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. Enjoy your travels.
Thank you. You bet.